we do need to up the bar. We got to raise the standards. Actually, kind of along those lines, was on Blue Sky earlier today, grabbing some stuff to get ready for the show, and also, I mean, I had weeks worth of articles backed up, but there was some stuff going on. I guess the IGN Creators Guild, which announced they were trying to unionize a while back, there was like lots of super triumphant stuff about they had set the goal of being voluntarily recognized by the employer, and they met that goal. And so I was weighing in on Blue Sky on a couple of threads that were promoting this by saying, congrats, first of all, I congratulated them. But then I added, I just want to remind people, especially people who may not be familiar with the history of the labor movement, as most people in the U.S. aren't. Keep in mind, the labor movement peaked around 1960 in this country. So really prior to when most people, working today were even born. And so you may not know this. It peaked around 1960 at like 30% of the private sector was unionized. And it's been in decline basically ever since, hitting around 7 or 8%, in the last decade or so. And there has been a resurgence since 2008, somewhat, and especially since Occupy and things like that, of the labor movement, where it's gone back up a couple of percentage points. But I think it's still around like 11% of the private sector. So most people really do not have familiarity or experience with the labor movement. And also I know people have not been taught labor history in their, coursework unless you went to college and took like labor history courses. You're very unlikely to have been educated at all in that. Part of the reason we try to make it more accessible here. So people may not know voluntary recognition by an employer doesn't really mean much. They can voluntarily recognize you and then still refuse to deal with you in good faith. It means basically nothing. So I was just reminding people, congrats on meeting your goal, but you have to remember that being an effective union is in no way predicated on being recognized or even being legal. You can, the effectiveness of your union, that depends on the amount of fight that workers bring to it. And we've covered this in some of the organizing manuals that we've posted on the channel, like from the IWW. It doesn't matter if you're recognized if you're not fighting. And you can be effective and not recognized, or recognized and not effective. You can be recognized and effective also, but they don't really have anything to do with each other. And I was just trying to point out, hey, that's great, you hit that goal, but this is like not even a full step on the road towards being a fighting movement. This is like half a step. And just keep that in mind. And there were a lot of liberals that really, I think, very naive and not ready to hear this at all. This wasn't a case, I would say, as somebody that has been posting things online for a while, I was careful to be polite about it. But just trying to point out there's tons and tons of work ahead. Whereas I think that there legitimately are a lot of people who look at this and go, we won, it's done. And just trying to point out to people that's really not how it works. And good, you did this, you decided to form a union. The recognition, though, almost sometimes lulls people into a false sense of confidence, thinking, oh, they'll do, what we want. And no, you actually have to struggle using a variety of tactics. So, after getting into a couple of clashes with people who were trying to portray this as like nitpicking or something, I was like, no. You just have to understand the kind of road that we have ahead. We went from 30% unionization down to 7 or 8%. How did that happen? Okay. And it happened because we didn't have a fighting movement and we got our asses kicked. So it's great to see this minor uptick in the labor movement. And I hope, we need it to keep going. It's the primary way that proletarians organize. Unions are our primary class organization. So we need to see that. But, a communist stepping in, congratulating them on that effort, and then trying to point the way towards next tasks and to cultivate a sense of militancy, that's not raining on your parade. And if you take it that way, it's probably because you somehow got the notion that, this is the end of the struggle. It's literally not even barely the beginning of it. So what was I saying? We need a massive resurgence of the labor movement and for it to become militantly anti-capitalist. I just want to caution people that recognition or legality is in no way a prerequisite for a union to be effective. So that's also for people who have started a union but aren't being recognized by the employer. It doesn't matter. Just fight. A lot of times you can get more of what you want because you turn up the heat because they're not recognizing you. So that people seeing this and thinking, oh, I wish I was recognized. No, it doesn't matter. Effectiveness depends solely on the fight that workers bring to the struggle. And, this is the case if you want your union to be a fighting proletarian organization. I mean, to fight just that employer, let alone the broader struggle against capital as a system. But I mean, even just fighting that employer, if you want it to be more than just a mere professional organization, that kind of dainty sort of like, lobbying group type of thing. If you want this to be a fighting organization, you have to bring the fight. And so it's a good step that people did decide to form this union. But I want to remind people this is like nowhere near the end of the road. What else did I have to say? Turns out, this was after a number of such interactions, turns out that a lot of totally naive liberals think that an employer's recognition of your union means literally anything for the success of your union. Carrying those kinds of illusions forward will mean that the current tepid resurrection of the labor movement will be stillborn and useless. And of course, we don't want it to be stillborn and useless. We want it to be robust and to have a strong fighting spirit and to be the seed of an anti-capitalist struggle that can actually bring the system down and lead to the construction of socialism. So that's the kind of goal here. And it seems to me unfortunate how many people really were not ready to even start thinking about next steps, or were trying to paint that message as being, somehow raining on the parade. Literally started out in the first thing, by congratulating people. But this is what happens. And so if you are a communist, I mean, obviously public relations are important. Be polite to people. But, as we continue to agitate and educate about upcoming tasks to try to encourage people and to shine a light on what comes next rather than just having workers get complacent and think that recognition means the end of the line, be prepared. You're going to encounter a lot of this. And, don't get nasty with people, but also don't give up ground either.